Hello there. Today I'm going to cover the latest version ISO 9001 2026 standard, the quality management standard. And I'm going to discuss the changes, and I'm going to discuss that how those changes are relevant to the quality management system, and then how a company can adapt for those changes and what are the transition timelines. So let me give you a brief intro about myself and then we'll get started. My name is Syed Arshad Hashmi, and I'm the consultant, trainer, and auditor at Core System Consultant. I've been working into this field of international standards and certifications for more than 30 years. I've provided consulting, training, and auditing services to a number of organizations across the globe. And that is a brief about myself. So now let's get started. For those of you who are interested to know about ISO 9001 certification and the basics of the quality management system, you can refer to one of my previous videos, which is this one. So this is the new standard, and as you can see, the on the top right corner, I have mentioned FDIS stage. Now this is the latest stage of the standard, which is just like the main standard, and I'll explain you just in my next slide what FDIS mean and how will it go. But these are some of the major changes that we are expecting in the 2026 version. So let's get started. Now, ISO standard revision stages, always the revision of any ISO standard takes place in three stages. So the stage one is called DIS, which stands for Draft International Standards. And when the changes are proposed, they are being evaluated by the members of the ISO technical committee. And then the changes happen, and those changes are incorporated into the FDIS. Now, FDIS is called the Final Draft International Standard, as you can see in the stage two, and this is what we are having since April 2026. And the only change now that we are expecting from the FDIS to the IS, which is called the international standard, will be in terms of the changes in terms of the typographical errors or any syntax errors or any grammatical mistakes, but there would not be any change in the concepts. So we can safely say that the FDIS that we are having, if we start working on those concepts, on the new changes, and if we understand, then it will be the changes and it will be the final changes in the final standard, which is the IS international standard. And we are expecting somewhere in September or October 2026. So the FDIS, so my this presentation is based on FDIS, which will be good for the main standard that we are expecting in coming months. So let's start with the major changes. And as I said earlier, I'm not going to go by the clauses, rather I'll try to focus by the topics. So the previous standard was all focused on the processes. This standard also focus on the processes, but it incorporates certain aspects of the businesses. As you can see on the right side, the 2026 version. So that will be my focus for today's presentation. The climate change incorporation, the cultural and ethical behavior changes, the opportunity-based thinking, and then the change management that has been elaborated. So, and few structural changes in the standard. So I'm going to discuss these topics one by one. And I will also try to create relevance with the quality management system so that you can well understand not just the topic, but can create a correlation with your existing systems and can easily transiate from the previous version to the new standard. So let's start with the first one, which is my climate change. So let's understand what is climate change. Now, climate change, as we all have heard in the news, that the weather patterns are changing, the temperature of the earth is rising, and the sea levels are rising. Is that the temperature and the extreme weathers are there, and then the drought and the severe heat waves we are experiencing every now and then. This is causing a lot of like wildfire in the west coast of the U.S., or snowstorms, more frequent snowstorms, or the changes in the tornadoes and the frequency of the flooding and raining. That all has been changing. And then the shifting in the essential resources, for example, in terms of the water scarcity that we are experiencing and losing of the fertile land or the agriculture capability. These are all the environmental impacts that is coming to us and to the industries. And what the ISO standard says is that what we need to do is to determine our quality management system that how these climate changes are relevant to our quality management system. So first we need to create the relevance in terms of the issues, internal and external, that can impact my quality management system, or in terms of the needs and expectations of the interested parties related to the climate change that can impact me as an organization. So that is what we need to evaluate. And I would like to give you a few examples on that, so that that will trigger your thinking process and you can further think and can create a correlation with your own organization. So the first example that I like to quote is about a pharmaceutical company. So as you know that in a pharmaceutical company, the most important thing is about the temperature and the humidity maintenance in terms of the creation of the medicines and the production of the medicines. And not just that, it also is very vital and essential in terms of transportation of these medications, especially those which are temperature sensitive medications and which needs to be refrigerated all the time. So those temperature changes and those heat waves that is happening around, that creates a question mark, and that provides an opportunity for the organization to evaluate its current air conditioning infrastructure, that would that be able to withstand that those heat waves. The maintenance is been happening regularly, and can that temperature changes may impact their transportation at any point of time. So this all needs to be evaluated, because that may impact the quality of the product and the quality of the delivery services as well, and that may create product non-conformity. So that's a correlation of the climate change with the manufacturing environment. Similarly, the next example that I like to quote is with respect to a transportation or logistic company. And as you can see that a lot of the frequent weather changes and the natural disasters and the increase in the snowstorm frequencies and all type of flooding and tornadoes that is happening more frequently, that can impact the land and the sea routes. And the company needs to evaluate that in case of these kind of issues, how they can best meet their delivery schedules, which is of course the conformity of their service. So this is something, a correlation of the climate change with respect to the operational capability of an organization. So another example that I can quote you is regarding a plain warehouse of an organization, which is heavily dependent on power, and the frequent power outages or the climate change that can impact the power outages can cause the delivery schedule again, and can cause the maintenance and the availability of those materials. And the company may try to go to solar, so that it may um, not be dependent only on the power supplied by the power companies. So that's how you can also incorporate, and that's how you can think in different directions about this climate change, how it can impact your quality management system, whether it was in terms of the quality of product or the quality of service. Next, we move on to the second topic, that is about ethical behavior and quality culture. Now, let's first understand what an ethical behavior is. So, the ethical behavior is best defined by the transparency and the honesty and the integrity at a personal level. How do you act in an ethical manner, doing the right thing, making the right decisions? And when it comes to the quality, I can give you two aspects: the the ethical behavior, my personal behavior with respect to the correctness of the data, and the service quality. So no one is watching me, how am I delivering the products and how am I noting down the readings and everything. But I need to ensure my integrity and the ethical behavior. And I need to do the correct thing, even no one is watching. And that's how we define the ethical behavior and the impact on the quality of product and services. Now, the quality culture is very interestingly is an output of this ethical behavior at a personal level converted to a team level. So both are pretty much interrelated with each other. And a quality culture is created when everyone acts in an integral or an ethical manner, and that creates the quality culture that
We
so these two concepts are basically interrelated with each other. And an ethical level or ethical behavior at a personal level generates the quality culture. So when everyone is allowed to act ethically and when they understand the sensitivity of this point, and that is incorporated as a value in the organization, then that automatically creates a quality culture. So, if I may try to um, give you a graphical representation, the ethical behavior creates a moral compass, personal moral compass. So, how am I doing the right thing at a personal level? And then, if that is mandated and supported by the management at the organization in terms of the transparency of the data, in terms of the root cause analysis, in terms of the correct decision making, in terms of speaking up on the non-conformities, that creates the quality culture with the support of the management to establish a quality culture at the organization, which is my system shield. So at the end of the day, I'm going to safeguard my system and my reputation in front of the customer by having a quality culture at my organization. So every right decision, every right move, every right direction matters, and that starts from the personal level till the team level. And that's the concept of ethical behavior versus quality culture. Now, how the standard incorporates these, just to give you an idea. So, standard primarily asks these to be addressed at the leadership level. They have incorporated new requirements there, um, and they have also asked to be incorporated at a awareness level. So, the companies needs to make people aware. It should not be into the HR policies. Elevate this issue. It should be in the training. It should be communicated to the organization workforce that they are allowed, they are free to make the right decision. Now, the third concept that we discussed is with respect to the risk-based thinking versus opportunity-based thinking. And I'll be honest with you that this is not a new stand. This is not a new requirement at all. This was very much there in the previous standard. And if I may take you through the definition of the risk-based thinking and the opportunity-based thinking, the risk based thinking is normally understood as preventing undesired results. So we need to evaluate the risk which to prevent the undesired results. And opportunity based thinking is pursuing desired results. So without getting into further details, the even in the previous standard, the risk based thinking and the positive risk is in itself is opportunity based thinking. So that was pretty much there in the previous standard. Now what they have done is that they have restructured the standard, and they have highlighted it in a way that organizations needs to do it in an explicit manner, the opportunity based thinking. So the structure of the standard is changed something like this. It was the previous version, and now the new version, and as you can see in 6.1, it says opportunities. And now in the new version, they have put a new clause, which is 6.1.3, which is actions to address opportunities. So the standard is now making it explicit for the organization to go for the opportunities. And just to give you an example on what kind of opportunities that the organization can think of, the opportunity based thinking may ask you to go for the favorable circumstances to innovate, adapt new practices, launch new products, improve productivity. So the risk-based thinking in an automotive industry safeguard my processes. So if there is a process and I can assume a threat of a hacker being hacking my system or doing a cyber attack, I can safeguard my system through firewalls, through policies and procedures, and so on and so forth. So that is my risk-based thinking, because I'm thinking of the threat that can damage my service delivery or my processes. Now, opportunity-based thinking, the same automotive, if that is thinking in terms of the surge in the EV market, the electric vehicle market, and I am putting budget to it, and the training for the employees, and acquiring those machinery and everything. That is called opportunity-based thinking. So, just to give you an example, that this was there in the previous standard. Now the standard has made it explicit. So companies need to think in terms of the opportunity, that how they are incorporating the opportunity based thinking. The change management is the same concept as it was earlier. So there was not much change in the change management, only that they have elaborated the change management process in terms of the communicating the change, monitoring and evaluating the change, and reviewing the final result or the implementation of the change. So they've just restructured the clause, which is 6.3. I do not want to name the clause, but just to create a relevance, it's a 6.3 clause. And the change management is discussed a few other places, but that is the clause which is restructured to incorporate the whole change management cycle. Now, there are a few other changes which I just like to highlight just to give you an idea. There is a 6.1.2 clause, and there is a note in that. and that discussed to determine the risk during and after a disruption. Now, this is a new thing that they have incorporated into the 2026 version, which is an interesting phenomena, by the way. Not that it was not done before, because when you determine the risk to the quality of product and services, you must have been addressing this thing. But now the standard is making it explicit so that the companies may not miss it out. And then there is another clause 8.2.1e, which also discusses this disruption thing. So that is a minor change in the standard, just to highlight. The other change is regarding the documented information. The previous maintain and retain has been replaced now with the available as documented information. So there's no maintain and retain anymore. It's just the available as documented information. A few structural changes, for example, in clause 10, there used to be three subclauses, and now they've made it. So there were used to be 10.1 and 10.2. Now they've made two subclauses. It's 10.1 and 10.2 only, which makes all the sense, and they have concised it to make a sensible approach out of this thing. Lastly, I would like to discuss the transition timelines. So the transition timelines for 2026 version, how much time a company which is already certified to 2015 version, how much time do you have? So we are standing here we are expecting the new version to come here at in September 2026. And from that point, the transition timeline would be of 3 years. So till September 2029, or if the standard may come in October 2026, then the transition timeline will be October 2029, that the companies need to translate to the new standard. And then in October 2029, all the previous 2020 2015 version certification will stand null and void. So that is the brief about the 2026 version. And I hope the information must may have been useful to you, and you will get the idea that how to incorporate those changes into your current management system to transition smoothly to 2026 version. One other thing that I've done is I have made a PDF of my slides. So if you want to download, you can check out the description, the link in the description below, and you can download all my slides and can well use it when you go back to your organization. And we are also offering a 30 minutes free consultation. So if you like to have a call with me or any of our experts, you can contact on the email below as it's appearing on the screen, and you'll be contacted for a free consultation slot, and you can ask your question in that. With that, I'd really like to thank you for watching and listening to the whole video, and I hope to see you in my next video. Till then, thank you so very much.